going to be a ZVZ between Denver and Raynor. So if you guys want to watch some Raynor, that's taking place over at the B stream today. I would have been okay with a ZVZ, but doing another PvT with you is also very fun, Nate. So let's get it on. In the bottom left side, we're looking at the main base of our French Terran, who did make an amazing run in one of the DreamHack seasons last year. Deep into the playoffs, it is Marine Lord.
That's right. And his opponent in the northeast, we have the blue Protoss player. He is DNS.
Wow. I just double checked, and he actually made it into the playoffs all 3 seasons. That's pretty impressive. And then the big one was fall, where he made top 4, so actually qualified for the season finals, where the Europeans will duke it out with the South Americans, the North Americans, the Koreans. So really impressive stuff by Marine Lord. 3 out of 3 times making it into the playoffs last year. As you guys can see, these are the group standings at this point. Kind of needs to win this one. Now, 0-2 is not the end of the world, but it does become harder to still secure a top 4 finish. I think anything up to 3 losses, you still have a very realistic shot. If you lose 4 best of 3s, then it's going to get tricky. But obviously, if you lose here and you still have Raynor to come, yeah, then you're potentially looking at 3 losses already, and that would be quite gnarly for Marine Lord.
Yeah, this is definitely a very important match. If he's going to continue that, like what you were talking about, and I was super impressed with him last year because he was like, yeah, guys, I'm back. I know I've been playing and memeing and all that. But then he was actually doing really well in all of the group stages. And, you know, he was getting knocked out by players like Serral, like Raynor. And, well, if you don't think that somebody who can go toe to toe with those guys is in the competitive space, then I don't really have much to say to you because, well, like you were saying, Kev, Raynor is not somebody that we expect to be giving up any of those W's to anybody else in these groups. And I'm sure that ZVZ is going to be a hell of a fight for Denver. But yeah, I mean, it's like when you watch those guys play, there's always something that you can pick up on that you hadn't seen before. They're just so meticulous, and yeah, I think that's why
I love this.
That's why Raynor's getting that GOAT status coming up now.
The timing of the Reaper is so smart here by Marine Lord. He waited. He didn't go into the main base immediately because he knew that first Reaper was already making its way to the other side of the map. But if you go too early, then that second Reaper pops. Excuse me, the Adept pops, and then there's not much you can accomplish. So he waited until he felt the time was right, and he knew that the Adept was walking down the ramp. That's when he hopped into the main base and grabs himself 2 probes immediately. Well done by Marine Lord.
Yeah, that's huge, right? You're not typically going to see Terrans being able to get multiple probes, let alone 1 in these early game skirmishes, but he can also come back, gets that scout off, sees the robotics facility at the front of the natural, and another probe here. This is fantastic. You really can't ask for a whole lot more, I think, with your starting Reaper. You scouted the tech, you killed a bunch of probes.
4, Nate. 4. The man killed 4 probes with his Reaper. Now, sure, obviously Marine Lord is playing it very safe at home with the command center on the high ground, but that was obviously a great decision because this map is so tiny that first Adept would be a nightmare to deal with. DNS is going to follow this up with a Dark Shrine. Wasn't totally paying attention with his Adept in the low ground, but he will be able to save it. But I think that the medevac drop, or the mine drop rather, will be able to scout the fact that there is a Dark Shrine on the way, and I think that Marine Lord is off to an excellent start here in game 1.
Yeah, it's really important that, as you said, that this drop or the medevac at some point sees the Dark Shrine. Of course, you don't want to throw a game away like that, because I think this has been a fantastic start for Marine Lord. I agree with you. He's done everything right. There's only been a couple of things to do really within the first 4 minutes and 20 seconds of a game of StarCraft, but at the same time, he's still in a good spot. So that Dark Shrine seems like it's going to be a very important play to get this game going back. The Prism just finished. Don't think the medevac saw that.
I don't know if he saw it. You know what's crazy is that DNS literally has no units that shoot up at this point, but this has got to make the alarm bells go off for Marine Lord. It's like, wait a minute, I've only seen Adepts. I haven't seen a single Stalker. I know you have a Robo. Where are you putting your gas? Well, that's often in a Dark Shrine, but it's actually very sad for Marine Lord that he unloaded both mines in the natural, because now he didn't make it into the main base where the Dark Shrine and the Twilight Council were. I think he's thinking about Dark Templars now, but Nate, it's already a little bit late. First DTs are about to show up.
and he had nothing. The engineering base started right as this warp prism was approaching his base. So yes, now he can build turrets, but he wasn't able to get anything up that whole previous time unless he gets that prism. And no, so still no turrets up. The limited amount of scans is going to make this difficult. He is starting that turret. He's starting up that stim pack upgrade now. So not, I don't know, man. 13 SCVs or this early in the game. I think it's more than safe to say that DNS did the damage that he needed to do.
Yeah, and a whole lot more, perhaps. This is about as much as you could hope for with your Dark Templars. DNS absolutely needed to find damage because everything else in the game did not work out. Well, he kept the Warp Prism alive. 2 Dark Templars get on top of the tank. That's the second tank he has killed. So it's not just the 14 SCVs. It's also the 2 tanks that will make whatever push Marine Lord had in mind a whole lot less intimidating because he just lost 2 tanks.
Yeah, no, I mean, he got him with the, he just did one of those little slide kicks, right? Just crouched down, boop, knocked him right off his feet. And Marine Lord, after a strong start with the Reaper, with the medevac play, getting out on the map, being in a good spot, is looking down the barrel of 20 worker discrepancy while that Protoss's 3rd base finishes up. And now I look at this and I'm thinking to myself, well, Kev, is this where he just gets a bunch of gateways and just makes a bunch of Blink Stalkers and goes into Zealots and overwhelms him with units? Or does DNS take this game into a different direction?
I wouldn't hate that. DNS is actually going for some Archon and Res. I think that's a little bit risky because he should know that Stim is done and that Warp Prism is already a bit low on HP. Only has 129 HP in total. So I'm not necessarily in love with this, but I think the DNS can do whatever the hell he wants as long as he can keep Marine Lord pinned on his side of the map a bit longer. But even if Marine Lord would move out, he lost 2 tanks. So whatever push he had in mind, it's just not that scary anymore.
Yeah, the ability to try and contain or siege him and use what we were talking about, the choke points on this map goes away. And there's the pickup on the Archons, forces out the Stim, gets a couple of shots there. And I agree with you. I think that the Prism move with this is really risky because the Archons aren't cheap. And giving anything that he gives up right now is really big because Marine Lord feels he's got to be aware that he's in the position where he's trying to come back into this game now. It's a bit awkward for him. He's lost the tanks like you were talking about. He lost a lot of his economy. DNS doesn't really have any pressure on him to do anything because he's a base ahead. He's got that fully saturated 3rd. He has a good army. He's building it up. He's getting upgrades. All he needs to do is just chill. And I assume that if and or when Marine Lord goes for that 3rd, we'll see DNS look to get a little more aggressive. But I don't think that there's a whole lot of pressure for him to do so. He just needs to keep building up and preparing for a possible 2-base sort of all-in type play out of Marine Lord if he just decides that he wants to put all his chips in at once.
I totally agree with you. I don't think it's up to DNS to make crazy plays happen now. He can just sit at home, crank out a couple of Colossi, and then he's going to be fine. Can we recall the Prism in time? That's the big question. The answer is no. I don't know if he had no energy available. Yeah, I checked all 3 Nexi. He didn't have a recall available. So that is a kind of a big loss. I still think that DNS can recover from it just because he's been so far ahead economically. Just a bit stubborn to leave that Prism there idling forever. You know there is always a chance that they do get a Viking out eventually, and he couldn't recall it in time.
Well, what's awkward too is right as that army moves out from this, the Stalkers came forward and grabbed that Viking. So he peeled a little bit of his army back towards his base too. Shuts down the pylon though and stops a lot of Zealots from warping in. Really good grab there by Marine Lord. They're going to be warped in behind the Nexus now, but even just a little bit of time, any moment you can grab yourself. As the bio gets onto the Immortals, they are super dead.
That's big, actually. Activating both barriers means that these Immortals are not as tanky as they normally are. I mean, the Colossus is about to come out, and I don't like this fight with DNS because he thinks he's good with battery overcharge, but he's fighting so far away from battery overcharge. It seems like he still has more than enough units to kind of take care of this, but it wasn't cheap, Nate, and we did lose all the Immortals there, the sentries, but I guess he does survive, and that still makes it good enough. That's only because he did so much damage with the Dark Templars. Although this game got a bit closer than it ever should have been, but I still think it's DNS's game.
Yeah, as you can see there, like I felt Marine Lord's control there, the way he moved up. You know, as you said, he got the barriers. He forced the cancel on the warp in. He's forcing DNS to put a few more inputs, a few more actions in. Maybe he was ready for that fight. But at the end of the day, DNS has had such a good economic position that he's more than okay to throw units at him as long as he replenishes those tech units. Because the Immortals did die. He did lose the sentries. You're not going to beat a bio player that gets over 100 supply with just Stalkers. As you can see, these Stalkers aren't magically able to kill Marauders and Marines in the middle of the map.
No, DNS needs to start getting on top of things. Like, I still think he's in a marvelous spot here. He's obviously 18 workers ahead. He's going up to 4 bases. I would have personally loved to see a double robo. I feel like if you're outmining your opponent this badly, why not get a double robo? Even if that one is just for a couple of observers, so you can get some more vision out on the map. Yeah, eventually building a Colossi and an Immort at the same time seems lovely. But you don't really want to have too many gateway units on this map, because you said it as well, there are so many choke points. If you go super heavy on the Zealots, there's a good chance that a lot of Zealots won't actually participate in the fight.
Exactly. There's a lot of things to consider. I just think, you know, you can't throw away another Prism with 2 Archons in it. As long as he's not making more moves like that, if we see a little bit of poke here and there, Stalker is like, okay, but, you know, you take that sort of fight in the way that it was set up, and honestly, despite everything, it was actually, I feel like it was almost really good for Marine Lord, even if his army got wiped, because he really needed to get some time to plant that third down. And I still feel that DNS might try to push this third soon, but this is something that he needs to be really, really careful about. And Marine Lord getting on the aggressive again.
Yep, and there are a lot of Archons on the side of DNS, and I think Marine Lord was very surprised to see that Protoss army there. He's like, well, why are you here? Like, I was gonna attack you, mate. And this is maybe one of the better spots that DNS could potentially take a fight, especially if the Liberators are not sieged up, and they were not sieged up. I think that this Protoss army is too big and too powerful. GG. DNS will take the 1-0 lead after a pretty rough early game. But yeah, turns out the Dark Templars are pretty awesome. I'm really sad for Marine Lord that he decided to drop both mines in the natural nade, because if he would have just dropped one mine, and he would have flown the medevac into the main base, he would have seen the Dark Shrine, would have seen the Twilight Council, he would have had that extra 10-15 seconds heads up, which I think would have made his defense a lot better. And on top of that, DNS had no units anyway in the main base, so the Widow Mine could also find a lot of damage, because all the probes were very clumped up because of the shield battery that was in that natural line. It's really unfortunate. Marine Lord tried to play it safe, and he's like, oh, I'll go for the guaranteed damage in the natural. Well, if he would have been just a little more YOLO and dropped one mine in the natural, the other mine in the main base, I think everything would have been different, and this probably would have been his game.
Yeah, I think as well, something you pointed out, the awareness. He saw the Robo going up, and there were no Stalkers, so there shouldn't have been an expectation that, like, Phoenix were waiting for him in the main base, right? So I'm completely with you on that side. I think there was a huge opportunity that he missed to just fly the medevac in, even if he wanted to leave the mines or just throw them away, whatever. I think just sending that medevac in to scout. We see Terran players do that all the time when they're there. They're like, oh yeah, just zoom in a little bit. If the medevac goes fast, you've got the boost for a reason, even if there was a Stalker or two. Yeah. But yeah, not seeing that Dark Shrine just put him too far behind economically, and he was never able to build that army that could contest. And I think especially questionable when you have those choke points and siege tanks and liberators. Defending that third base is going to be a lot easier than on a map like, I don't know, like Lightshade, where it's a little bit more open. You have a little more of that open terrain to try and push through there. But when if he keeps those liberators and those tanks and blocks those choke points off and gets that third base going, and then tries to maybe max out and make another big push, even if he's behind, he can still try to equalize by, the great equalizer of StarCraft, which is 200 supply. You can't go past that. So unless you're Snoot. But otherwise, hopefully Marine Lord just got to be a little bit more aware going into this game. There were only so many ways that he was going to lose in a normal standard game after that Reaper did so much damage early on, I feel.
No, I'm with you. I think there was a tiny opportunity in the late game where if Marine Lord would have just waited a little bit longer, he would have gotten a few more buy units and then get a proper setup with the tanks and liberators. But it was pretty obvious that DNS was expecting the 3-base all in by, in between brackets. But Marine Lord had no armor, he had no Ghost Academy. So he was clearly looking to end the game, knowing that if this would go on for a super long time, he'd be too far behind. Maybe there was comeback potential, but I think we always have to address the first problem, and that is obviously the mine drop. It could have scouted better, it could have done more damage, and it would have made for a completely different game. However, this man does not give a damn. He lost 4 probes to a Reaper, but he still ended up winning the game, and that feels extra good. The French Protoss DNS.
Did everything he needed to do in that first map. And his opponent in the southwest, we have the red Terran player. He is Marine Lord.
You know, one final thing we can say about the early stage of that first game is that it's obviously always better to drop mines in 2 mineral lines than it is to drop 2 mines in 1 mineral line. Because if you drop it in 2 mineral lines, that's double lost mining time, that's double the potential for one of those cash money shots. And that is one more reason to go for the double mine drop in 2 bases if you feel like the opportunity is there. Now, obviously, Marino doesn't have our vision in his defense. He was probably afraid that there were 4 stalkers waiting in the main base. But I think if he would have truly analyzed everything he saw, knowing that 1 adept was on his side of the map, there were 2 adepts there, it's not possible for there to be 4 stalkers in the main base, because that would mean that Protoss would have 7 or 8 units out 4.5 minutes into the game, while also having a robo. Well, that's just not a thing. It's not a build order.
Yeah, no, well, I think that's a completely reasonable thing to say. And as we get into this game, you know, I guess Marine Lord's strategy, none of it really seemed it didn't to me appear to be like the deciding factor in how that went down. Just the lack of awareness on what a Protoss player that loses 4 probes at the start of the game is going to do to get back in the game. There's really only a couple of options on that one. So maybe you think about, okay, get my eBay a little bit faster, but at the same time, it's not like DT's the only option that Protoss has as far as the build goes. So he still needs to keep his eyes peeled, because it could be any other number of directions that DNS can take this. And he's in that comfortable position, right? Being up 1-0, a little bit of the pressure is off, and there's that Stargate. So we talk about the awareness, talk about trying to make heads up plays. This is going to be that. You can't be thinking about what happened in the last game. You got to move forward and get ready for what's coming here.
Yep, Marino going for a funny opening here with a Marine into a reactor. So I guess he's going to crank out a couple of Hellions early on. We can see that his SCV has made it home safely, so this SCV is not building a starport out on the map. I wonder if this is going to be a little bit close, and I think the Adept will at least be able to pick up the first SCV before this command center is done. Nate, the wrapping paper.
Oh, you're right. It's not. It's done, Kevin. It's done. You just got to open the box. It's one of those. You know, it's one of those boxes that you can't open with your hands. The anti-theft boxes. You need to get a pair of scissors to cut this thing open. Unfortunately, it's just stuck there. This SCV needs to get down. The Hellions are out, so it's going to be able to make that move. And the Hellion play gets a little bit tricky too, right? Because the Phoenix are going to have. I mean, they do bonus damage to the Hellion. So if he's able to have the Phoenix in the right position, they shouldn't be able to just run in and kill probes. Even if it comes through the drop, you should still be able to mitigate this kind of build. I think it's actually a really good setup for DNS. The fear might be Hellion run by while the mines get dropped. But I think he still has plenty of information to be able to deal with that. He's seen the Hellions for a while now, and they're both very low on hit points. So if he doesn't go back to repair them, they're pretty much worthless.
I'm absolutely with you. I think this is a perfect setup for DNS. He knows that the first 2 Hellions took a beating. He can now also see them go home. Can the Phoenix get a scout up on them? Wait, what? Okay, the other Phoenix is coming.
Okay.
Yeah, he will be able to still kill it. Can he spot the medevac on the left side? He's damn close. He misses it by the blink of an eye. Now, the fact that there is nothing here in the main other than an ultra low HP Hellion should be the sign that, yeah, something is heading your way. And that could pretty much only be a medevac with 4 Hellions or a medevac with a couple of Widow Mines. And we have Macfield Accelerator as the follow-up. But yeah, look at this. Marino is going to be able to find potentially some more damage with his mine drop than I expected. We do have a couple of Adepts here. He's going to leave 1. Ooh, I like that Widow Mine on the high grind.
That's somebody who's, you play this map enough times, you're going to know all those spots. One of the Widow Mines goes into the abyss of the assimilator, but gets 5 probes. Can't complain too much about that. The Phoenix will be able to chase down this medevac. Not a whole lot you can do about that. And he'll just try to tuck this mine in the corner, but it is not invisible, Kevin. It does not have the armory to give that upgrade so that it stays invisible while burrowed, and it gets cleaned up without too much trouble. So 5 worker difference. But with the mules, that actually puts Marine Lord in a nice economic position, but then the 3rd base is finishing up for DNS. So as long as he keeps the probe production, he should be able to smoothly transition to that mid-game stage that he wants to get to.
Yep, and he still actually has quite a few units. Let's not forget that Marino opened up with 2 Hellions that went down, then lost the medevac and all these Widow Mines. As for a second that DNS thought of lifting a Cyclone, I wouldn't have hated the play. Sure, 1 Phoenix would have taken a lot of damage, but I think he would always be able to save his Phoenix, and he's going to go for it a little bit later. But now we've got Marines out helping too. But let's not forget about these Adepts that are trying to shade into the natural. I feel that DNS should have done this the first time, because he could have taken a fight against double Cyclone Viscount. Instead, he took a fight against double Cyclone Viking and 4 Marines.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I would have loved to see the Phoenix used with this. I'm not entirely sure that the maximum value they generate is from killing SCVs. The economic position is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but I was gonna say if he smooths the Adepts in and the Phoenix are able to kill the Cyclones, I think the 4 or 5 Phoenix, as long as they all survive that, I think they can kill the 2 Vikings too. And then the Adepts become a little bit more annoying because those Cyclones they don't really have a lot of hit points, even if they're armored units. So the Phoenix can still pick them apart without too much trouble generally.
Yep. Things still working out for DNS, but it even feels that there was potential for a bigger lead than he's currently enjoying. But I think in the end, he doesn't care. The only thing that truly matters for him is getting a W in this best of 3. And things are starting to look very promising in game 2, especially because Charge is on the way. And I really hope for Marine Lord that he's not walking this army to the other side of the map. Because, Nate, this army is going to get swallowed up by Zealots. And once it makes its point, well, 70-80% to the other side of the map, I think this army is never coming home, and Marine Lord is about to lose even more units. Now, Charge is not totally done yet, but Charge doesn't take very long. You chrono boost it once, and it's going to finish up. I think Marine Lord is making a mistake, man, with this move out.
Yeah, I think it's also worth pointing out as that overcharge comes in, Magfield Accelerator that he started earlier got canceled, and it actually does out DPS a shield battery. So the Stalkers were able to do a lot more work than otherwise just from that too. So these guys are all that's needed to defend. Not something that you can normally say about a Terran move out at 7 minutes. That 4 Stalkers and a battery will hold all of it, but the Phoenix come back too. The Vikings get cleaned up, and it looks like the Vikings killed a couple of the probes.
Yeah.
Two Vikings will one-shot a probe. They do just enough damage for that, so they're a little bit annoying in that way, but they are dead. So 61 probes to 57 SCVs. Actually not that bad for Marine Lord worker-wise, but the units that he's traded away to make that happen, his army is very small still.
The best thing about all of that was that Viking in the main. If it wasn't for that Viking in the main, this would have been a straight up disaster because he lost the Cyclones, lost the Viking with the push, lost all his Marines again. Now, normally losing a couple Marines in the other game, we're like, no big, that's what Marines are for. But against what DNS is doing, it's actually important to get a lot of bio units out. Otherwise, you can take your third. And DNS doesn't have to take this fight at all. But he's like, hey, man, you've been losing so many units. I think I can shave off a few more bio units. And he's not wrong. Like, he's fighting in the natural of Marine Lord while dropping a Templar Archives and a Robo-Bay on the other side of the map. I think that kind of tells us all that we really need to say. As look at the Phoenix count, by the way. Jeez Louise, it's so high. You gotta love it.
Yeah, no, I know that warms your heart, Kevin. He's actually, he's poking away at that command center. I was gonna say the medevacs are gonna pop out right in front of these Phoenix too, so gets another kill there. He's gonna grab a few more of these Marines. Very confident play. He says, oh yeah, I see you've got a lot of bio, but it's mostly Marauders, and those bad boys don't shoot up.
Nope. There was one more Widowmine hidden behind the starport, and that one does get a good shot off. But geez Louise, these Phoenixes is going to town on everything Marine Lord tried to produce. The Marine Lord's army is just not growing. Economically, I agree with you. It's really not that bad. 63 SCVs against 71 probes. Fort base not totally up and running yet for DNS. So that's not the issue. What kind of is the issue is the fact that Marine Lord just keeps losing everything he's been producing. And that means that the army is not growing. So we also have a little update coming in, Nate, from the B stream. Apparently, sometimes old school beats new school as Braddock took out Nilki Cow 2-0.
Nice. Braddock, one of the OG Terran memers, especially if you like weird builds like me. And watching him since you were in the crib, probably, with his Raven and Mech memes throughout the years. Awesome to hear about that. And Marine Lord finally getting his third planted down. Also, it's great to hear about that too, Kev.
Yeah, the Widowmine's starting to get more and more connections. I mean, these Phoenixes in high numbers were absolutely a problem in the main base as they were picking off medevac after medevac. And eventually DNS getting a little bit too carried away, flying into mine after mine, now getting close to the Terran army. Marine Lord still has a chance. And yeah, once the Phoenix numbers go down, we can start thinking about dropping again, because 4 Phoenixes is definitely not enough to deal with a double drop. Marine Lord still fighting. A win would be massive here. Do have a couple of Archons though. And Archons are hard to take out if you don't have any Ghosts in the mix.
Yeah, because he has the rest of the army heading towards the fort. So this is one of those moments where DNS needs to split the army perfectly. That Terran bio has a lot of DPS. So if he doesn't send enough to this fort, he can lose that. I love the mines. He left them to cut off that space between. He's got the bio in the tightest choke point possible against the Zealots, because the Phoenix are going to deal with the medevac. So he just wants that bio to kill as much as it can on the way out. Saves a few of these units, I think, if they decide to lift all of them. they can still get them, but it's just 2 Marauders now. So actually really well,
Oh,
I want to say really well defended there by DNS. Keeps the bases alive, kept his economy alive. Lost a little bit of his army and got supply blocked. I think that might be the biggest problem.
Yeah.
But as long as he's got the gateway count and the production going, I think he should be able to spend that money and get towards 200 pretty soon, honestly.
well, he's building 7 or 8 pylons at the time, but I think at this point DNS is just thinking about ending this game. I don't know if that's gonna work, but he does have a lot of Archons. And like I said before, we don't have any ghosts yet, so that makes it very hard for these bio units. Phoenix is still being annoying, lifting a few, but not a single unit going down yet. Big Daddy Colossus is here though, and that's the second stim on the army of Marine Lord. All the SCVs are super clumped up, and the Archons and Colossi are having a field day. I don't know if Marine Lord can deal with this Protoss army.
Can't get on top of the Colossus. He's been having a really tough time with that. He's going to recall. Says, okay, 21 SCVs is more than enough. A couple random Widow Mines were able to still get some probe kills throughout that. So just 66 workers for DNS, but that is still plenty given the circumstances. If I'm looking at things that I like for Marine Lord, 2-2 is about to finish, +1 ship weapons is about to finish. But again, it kind of boils down to he hasn't been able to kind of craft that perfectly assorted army. He's got Marines and Marauders and Medevacs, but we're past the point where you're going to be able to do a whole lot without specialist units. You know, the Colossi can really tango with the Widow Mines, with that range difference. They kill the Marines, of course, and then if there's enough of a meat shield, those Marauders are gonna have a hard time closing the gap too. But maybe this is it. This is a huge drop. The Widow Mine pushed the Phoenix away, so he's gonna put everything inside the main base of DNS.
Yeah, but DNS still has a big army. A lot of Zealots, a lot of Stalkers. This may not be the prettiest cleanup, but it is definitely going to be a cleanup. Can the Phoenixes take out one of the Medevacs with units? Seems like it was an empty Medevac. All the DNS really needs to do, Nate, is spend his money. He's been sitting on quite some money for a little while, and I don't understand why we don't build a second Robo in scenarios like this. It's like, mate, you've got the minerals, you've got the gas, Robo units is all you want. He should also fire up extended thermal lens because he still doesn't have that. I think the pressure is getting to him a little bit because I think it's like he can smell victory. It's so close, he can almost taste it. But he needs to make sure that he still puts it on a plate or something because he's making it a bit harder than it should be, Nate.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. The second Robo would help so much here too. Because as you said, it's not an economic issue for DNS. He's got his 4 bases. He's been great. He's killed tons of SCVs. And Marine Lord is down about 30 army supply despite all of that. Well, then that next big warp in puts him down about 40 or almost 50 army supply Kev. So
Yeah.
if he had a second Robo, the number of Colossi here, I think this one would be well passed over. He's going into a fusion core, getting +2 ship weapons. So the Liberators gain a lot of firepower from those upgrades, but he's not put himself in a position where he can make those investments because he still doesn't have the army. And yeah, you can start all the upgrades, you can make all the late game plans in the world, but this force from DNS still cannot be stopped. He's not going to let him get there. He's not going to let him get up to 10 ranged Liberators holding down the fort. DNS is going to take this series 2-0.